Hey everybody, good morning. I hope you're doing well and that you had a great weekend. This week we're gonna kick things off by just having a cup of coffee, listening to some of the tracks that you guys have been submitting, and boy, you guys really went hard. I've gotten a lot of submissions over the weekend, so thank you for that. Sadly not gonna get through all of them because it's literally a 3-digit number of submissions, but I'm gonna just try to go through as many as we can. Let me know where you're tuning in from. It's always fun to see. Let me know what you've been up to this weekend as well, if you've been up to anything fun. I have actually just been trying to recharge after a crazy week, so it's not any really crazy updates on my end. But I'm excited to kick up the week and listen to some of the music that you guys have been sending in. So I've just dragged them in here, and I've also created a little bit of a reference track from a track that Joshua Crispin and I have done just to have a reference in terms of the mix and stereo field as well as depth and everything, to kind of just reference a little bit if we need to in terms of making any specific points. So let me know if you guys can hear me clearly, if the sound is alright, and let me know if you guys can hear Ableton. I'll do a little quick sound check right now. Let me know if you can hear those strings right here, and if you can listen to this. If you can, awesome. So we got Germany, Florida, Mississippi, Russia, Costa Rica, Ireland. Amazing. We got the whole world represented right here. Italy, Ukraine, Chicago. Even more Germans. Epic. Well, I think we'll just dive right in and then we'll see where this is going to take us. So we got first Rupert here with a heroic theme. Let's listen to that and see what we think. And this is, you guys can feel free to I want this to be an exercise for everybody as well. This is not us sitting roasting tracks or sitting just saying, oh, great work for every single track. The goal here is to learn something, both collectively and the individuals who have submitted these tracks. And it would you can feel free to comment if there's any of common problem areas that we're discussing in my courses or my teaching, whether it comes to lack of separation, whether it comes to chord voicing issues, or if things sound maybe a little bit too busy, because these are not bad things, they're just fixable things and things to be aware of, and once they're pointed out, they're easier to fix. So if there's anything that stands out to you in terms of lack of separation and so on, feel free to post it in the comments, because it's a good exercise to learn and train yourself to notice it as well. So let's have a listen and go through some of these tracks. All right, so first of all, absolutely stunning, really beautiful development and really beautiful motif they've been developing throughout this entire track. So the first really positive impressions here is that it's very easy to follow this track. It has a very strong identity. The motif is very easy to remember, and it never feels confusing or that you don't really understand where it's going. Let me know if you guys are agreeing with that. I think it's a very strong motif, and I think they developed it super well. Someone mentioned the trumpet needs to breathe, which was I thought of mine as well. I couldn't really tell if there were breaks in the breathing for the melody of the trumpet here. Let me know, Rupert, if you actually consciously did that. If not, it's something worth mentioning. Because these are really long notes, and this would absolutely be killing the lungs of the trumpet player in this high range if no breathing pauses have been kind of put in. So that's just something to be aware of. I hear there could be like some tiny breaks, but it's something to be aware of that to make it even more realistic. Because it's something that just stood out to me is that they felt a little bit long, these phrases, without any breathing. So it's something to be aware of when it comes to all wind and brass instruments, is that especially in these high ranges they use a lot of breath and they need to be able to breathe. So that's one thing that's worth mentioning. At the very end here it's a little bit better with the flute and oboe coming in these two sections, because they're not as long, the phrases, and then at the end you actually really let them breathe before the next instrument comes in. Alternatively, you could like stretch this one out a little bit and then have a quick break in the breathing between the phrases here. But yeah, we're talking details right now. One little exercise, I'm not sure how accurate it, but it sometimes helps me a little bit, or at least did in the beginning before I actually picked up a trumpet and realized how hard the thing was, is to try to like forcefully kind of breathe out as you're playing, or even hold your breath, but use your breath as you're listening to this and try to hold your breath for the entire duration of this phrase, or actually breathe out, which is what they're doing. And if that's hard, yeah, it might be a point that something might be you have to look at it in terms of the breathing. Another thing is just mixing wise, it feels, I'm just on headphones and not on monitors, but it feels like it's lacking a little bit of that stable low end warmth, like this stable core that is supporting this beautiful rich arrangement. So let's listen to this. It's like very, very high end heavy. Let me see if this is not going to do much, I think, but I'm just curious now anyways if there's anything I can do to prove a little point. This feels a little harsh around like the 2K range. Yeah, so in this area right here, I would really love a really strong bass. So say really big low strings and maybe like a sub bass mixed in to really create a solid foundation. So if you listen to my reference here in comparison. Yeah, so it's just lacking a little bit of bass, which, you know, always is really hard. It's an endless, lifelong struggle, but just something to point out. So those are just the immediate things that stick out: beautiful writing, beautiful arranging. The track structure is great. It flows and evolves really beautifully. I would just look at the breathing and just keep that in mind for the future, because it's just like a minor detail that for people who have kind of done this a bit, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. But for a lot of people, might not even notice. But it's like a thing that when you fix it, it just makes everything sound a lot more professional. And the rest of this arrangement is really beautifully done. So I would just work a little bit on kind of strengthening the low end and working on the breathing things. Otherwise, beautiful track. Let's move on. Yeah, it's beautiful hearing the trumpet as well, as people are saying. Beautiful textures and pianos in the beginning, and giving me a little bit of Olafur Arnalds vibes. All right, so first immediate impressions here is that I really love the textures in the beginning, and I love the build up until this point. And here you can see even in the waveform that this is clipping, and someone mentioned also a bit much low and mids on the side maybe, but this is clipping and distorting on these high velocity notes. So that's something to keep in mind, like when you are setting the levels of your tracks. First of all, of course, make sure that it's not clipping, because if you look at your meter, you should probably be able to see that it's going in the red. The second thing is, when working with pianos, you have highly dynamic instruments. So what that means is that if you have a few velocity notes or accents like we see here, they can be a heck of a lot louder than the rest of the notes. And this can, even if you are using this section to set your volume and these notes come, you will just blow out the speakers or like go in the red and clip and distort. So that's something to be aware of when working with pianos and highly dynamic instruments that have velocity accents, is that it can suddenly just get a lot louder. So a way to deal with this is to go out and smoothen out some of the velocities, make sure that the loudest peaks don't actually clip, and maybe even compress the MIDI or compressing the audio a little bit, or both. You want to be careful with compression on pianos and things to make sure you don't get like this nasty pumping, but I would lower the volume and look at trying to tighten this a little bit in terms of avoiding clipping for the bounce, because if you're submitting this to anything or to be used for anything, it's pretty much impossible when it's clipping like this, because it's very distracting and it takes away from the really beautiful atmosphere. Second thing is, from here to here, really cool texture. From here, it's pretty much the same as far as I can remember. I would love to hear something else happen at this point. Whether that is bringing in the plugs here, or some of these elements and bringing that over here. That could maybe be interesting. And yeah, someone's mentioned gain staging. Absolutely is essential here. I would love to hear this evolve a little bit more, and then this transition is just kind of just happening. It's just like, oh, this is over now. Now something else. And apart from the chords, it's not much happening to tie them together. So I would personally work in this transition, maybe work on incorporating some of these elements in this section towards the end, and then having some kind of transition that goes into this so that it feels more smooth and not as abrupt. And then this doesn't become as stagnant either. And this feels, I think if this is repeating just twice the same, here again is an opportunity to say, introduce this element here, then take this element out of here, only leaving the other element, and then reintroducing it back here. Just to always keep it moving a little bit and keeping it interesting. So those are just the immediate thoughts on that one. Let's move on as we have quite a few tracks to go through. Yeah, someone is saying really unique, might be too bit repetitive. That's basically what I was saying at the very end. Those are my overall thoughts. I'm not sure what this was meant for, but I really enjoyed the atmosphere in the beginning. Great work. Yeah, it's a really cool atmosphere happening here, and I really like the sonic kind of texture and tone colors that's being used. The only thing that kind of sticks out to me that I would love to hear is a bit more life in the strings, a bit more development and swells and things happening, and also a more central kind of motif that this is built around that is repeating. Because now it feels like it's kind of just moving around. Not randomly, but it's just moving around. I don't feel like I'm guided as a listener in a direction at every given time. In the same way as, say, the first track, which has a very, very distinct motif that's being reused. I would love to hear that here because the textures and everything, really cool. So I would work on a little bit more life in the strings and swells and mock-ups, which is something we will have a look at in my program, but I would also focus on a central motif that guides me as a listener, kind of the main character in this story that's entering this world. Those are the main thoughts that kind of stick out because the vocals and the textures really cool. And yeah, Rupert says the thought it should really kick up when it stopped. Also, this is, I see it's the challenge track, so it was a limit for 1 minute. But it would be really cool to have central motif and then just really kick that off as this ends and go into something even crazier. Can hear some of my textures in here. Really cool chord at the very end here. First thing that just stuck out right this moment is this transition. I think the more beautiful kind of major part, it could have a slower fade, because right now it kind of just morphs into, and you're just like, wait, what on earth is going on? Then you're like, okay, I see what's up. And here is when you kind of get your bearings again. So I just think this could be a little smoother. Really like the idea of going back to this in the end though. And overall, really great track idea and build. And it flows really smoothly. It doesn't really abruptly stop or transition, apart from this little transition here, in any ways that kind of throw you off as a listener. Really cool minor second chord progression thing, really tense. Good use of the ostinatos. One thing that just stuck out is also that, the ending is really unexpected. I really thought that was quite cool. Really unique choice here. It might have a little bit too much reverb on the strings and things like that. They feel a little bit far away and distant and lacking some bite. I would love to hear this with like really tight, gritty, more accented rhythmic strings. So not just relaxed like someone is kind of having a drink and playing this in the background, but someone who's really meaning it, sitting really close to the mic, and not as much reverb or room mic sound would be really cool. And that would also help it sound bigger and bigger, and I would incorporate some more drier, more percussive strings and samples and low elements to give it some more drive and just punch. And probably some more like transitions, rolls, and effects to just kind of keep the momentum for each transition and repetition, because it doesn't really change that much for each repetition. It could have been, someone says it could have been stronger. I agree in terms of the strings. Something like Metropolis Arc 3, I think would be really good. So let me just quickly demonstrate what that library then would sound like in comparison. And also think the strings could join in, say, the ostinato and things like that, just to make it build a bit better. Someone is asking, were you able to send your track for feedback? We've already got over 100 submissions, and there's no way we're going to be able to go through all of them, because I also kind of want to, as I'm doing now, try to actually make some points and not just listen through tracks and not bring any value. Because even if it's not your track, I'm hoping you're learning something from listening to this, hearing what I'm thinking, and then demonstrating some things, and so on. So we got low strings here. Let's see what this sounds like. I'm just going to bring up my keyboard. Okay, so I need to add some higher strings too. But this is just a random library, but I think already some drier. It'd be cool to hear some more like drier, more powerful low strings there with ostinatos and things like that. So that's just some immediate thoughts, and some low kind of sound designy little hits that don't take too much space and that blend in. It could also help just like drive it forwards for each section and make it more friendly for edits, whether that's for games, films, trailers, advertising, whatever that would be. Those are just my immediate thoughts on that one. Let's move on. Asking if I would use closed mic on everything. Not on everything, but I prefer personally a closer sound. I think reverb is kind of overused in a lot of scenarios, and in a lot of times it actually brings more problems than it fixes, and people definitely overuse it and use too much. Most people could probably dial back the reverb like 40%. Not necessarily talking about this selection of tracks, but just in general. You don't really need that much reverb, and I anymore don't really add much reverb to any libraries except for as an effect in certain places. Most of the time I just leave it natural. I used to, as you might remember, for my courses, and right now I feel like getting better results from just using the room mics and everything, dialing things in the library and not messing too much with it. I might use a reverb to kind of glue things together in a hall sometimes, because that can help if it's not a similar library. And thanks. Yeah, I tried my best. Like, there was a crazy latency on that little live performance there with the strings. Yeah, close mics on SF chamber strings with spiccatos. Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Hey, Dream Away. Let me see. Yeah, there's a bunch of tracks in here where I'm gonna do my very best to just get through as many as possible, but I'm not gonna get through even close to the amount of tracks that came in, so I'll have to do more of these. I'm also going based on who submitted first, just doing it in chronological order. I've sorted it based on first submissions to last. Okay, a couple of immediate thoughts. The first is that I loved like this atmosphere. Whatever was going on here, super cool, kind of dark, like the show dark, Stranger Things atmosphere that really piqued my interest. And the only thing that I'm sad about is that it didn't continue dragging me into that world. So in the beginning here, it's being hinted to. But it's not established, it's hinted to. I wish this was established. Say just that pluck. I don't have all the notes because it's low strings. I wish that was just kind of filtered in over an atmosphere or something coming in here with some hits, and then we came into this part, and then that kind of kept going while some melodies were coming over. But here at this point, the string mock-up, it sounds kind of, it's just always lagging because it's probably a sustain patch or something, not a legato patch. So I would look at working with a legato patch instead and just work on solidifying an idea here, because it's like starting so well, and then once you get here, it's kind of hard to understand what the main idea is and focus on it. Like here, there's a few things that's kind of clashing. And some of the chord voicings are a bit muddy, and it's kind of hard to hear what chord it is. Oh, and at the end here, it sounds like it's starting a new melody and it's going down, whereas this is just a very, very rough rule of thumb, but in most cases you'll have more tension and a more climatic feel if you're having an ascending melody at the end. To at least this kind of, and that's kind of going for a trailer style ending. But I'm not necessarily sure that's like the best way to end a track like this. I would love to hear more of this idea just being focused on and developed. It wouldn't even have to be very crazy. Could have been strings doubling that ostinato, some synth basses doubling the synth basses under, percussion that doesn't necessarily break with that rhythm, but it just enhances it, and a very simple melody on top of it that still fits, gives you that eerie kind of dark like feeling. That's what I would love to hear with this. Again, my personal opinion, and I would simplify this intro to just be say that pluck coming in, not necessarily anything more fancy, and work on the string writing to make that more realistic in the back end. Oh, Marcos asking, based on my advice, better to have a more dry mix. Not necessarily, because most string libraries are already recorded in a big concert hall. So what you're doing, especially if you're slapping on a 5-second decay 30% mix string sound, is that you're just creating a bunch of mud in the low mids and just creating a wash that in a lot of scenarios will just take out the detail and the attack of a lot of things and just make it a lot more just like a soup of sound. I'm not saying never use reverb. I'm just saying sometimes what's actually in there is enough. And a lot of times people, me included years ago, used reverb to make things sound bigger when it's just masking over issues you could have fixed in other ways. You could have done it with better chord voicing, more interesting voice leading, a better separation between instruments, but instead we just wanted to sound big and lush, which throw reverb on there. Easy fix. But it also comes at a cost, which makes it a lot harder to mix. When I went over to Austin Seltzer's mixing studio the other week to record a course with him, he never, I didn't see him use reverb once. That's not to say that there's no reverb in his songs or the mixes. It's just that usually the people or the producers have used reverb already, and it's already in there. And he's never using reverb to create width or depth or space. There's a lot of other, sometimes he's actually using EQ to position things in relation to another and create depth. And he was showcasing that in that course. And my mind was kind of blown, and he was talking about like how so many people that he hear and tracks that he gets sent, a lot of times reverb is used where reverb is not actually needed. And there's other things that could have fixed the issue better without giving the side effects of reverb. I hope that's making sense. All right, let's go, Ariel. I love this one. Yeah, this is a great one. It grabs me just from the beginning and it grows very nicely the whole time. If I'm gonna be really picky, it might be personal choice, but I think it could sound better if there was no octaves in the melody here. Just because of the simple, open voicing in the low end, tighter in the high end kind of thing. It generates a little bit of mud, and a lot of times octaves will make a melody stronger and clearer. In this case, I feel like it's almost making it a little bit less clear. And I would maybe personally prefer just a very strong solo cello or cello melody without a lower octave here. But again, we're talking really like small details right now, because this is really solid, you know. Yeah, like a nice, beautiful solo cello here could be really cool. I don't really know how to play cello, but I want to see what it sounds like. Yeah, I think something like that is like playing really but soaring, and that eventually goes up to higher octave. Could be really cool there. Just have to break this one out. And I think that would work a little bit better. Just tiny details now. And I feel the strings might be a little bit... Do you have OTT on there by any chance? It might be a little bit too much OTT or a little bit too much EQing, because around the 1 or 2K range feels a little bit like right around here. Just in the staccatos. So of course taking away this would take away from the whole track, but the strings feel a little bit over processed. Oh, these chords with like the add nines and everything. Beautiful. And I think we're talking tiny details, but I'm just like, you know, thinking out loud. When it comes to these kind of chords and these little breaks, here it could be interesting if maybe not the strings, but the chords, if you automated the volumes just to go out, or a filter just to take it out, so it kind of comes back in. Not the strings, of course, and the hits, but the background chords. If you did that with those, I think it would just like make every chord just pump even more. Staccatos do have OTT, yeah, cool, that's what I thought. So it might be a little bit too much OTT. You might want to look at maybe taming it with Soothe, or just backing off the OTT a little bit, maybe undoing some of the processing. OTT is over the top compressor, basically. It's built into Ableton, but there's also a free one that looks just about like this. And what it does is that it just squashes the living thing out of any track if you wanted to. You hear this is like 100%, and then you can dial it in. But you can hear that kind of like harsh high mid kind of 1 to 5K range. And if you listen very specifically to the staccato strings, see if you can hear this quality that we hear in the entire mix right now in those strings. OTT on 100 on the master, that's how we roll. No, never do that. But see if you can hear this quality in the strings, and let me know in the comments if you can tell. So let me know if you can hear that on the short strings as well, only the short strings. That's what OTT does. I would back off a little bit. Yeah, transparent EQ boost. It's probably a little. I would just back off the processing, whatever. If you've used EQ or anything, it's always a danger to put too much on the strings, just because the strings, by nature, are fairly harsh, or they can be harsh in that range. What you also could try to do would be just to like use Soothe or even Pro Q and just use a dynamic EQ around that range, around like the 1-2K, maybe all the way up to 5, depending on what it sounds like. It's hard to hear it when it's not isolated, and just make sure that it dips a few times if it gets a little bit too harsh before you go into anything that's extending in that range, because now you might get a build-up that might overpower the other things. Hope that is making sense. So OTT is just a compressor. It's a multiband compressor that is also an expander. So it just absolutely just squashes things, and it sounds really cool. You can use it for really cool things, but it can also do some damage, especially in this scenario. But it's nothing crazy. It's just stuck out to me because it's something I've done a lot as well. And then I've sent it to like people like Josh, and he's be like, hey, you gotta back off the OTT a little bit on these strings here. It sounds a little bit harsh. Let's move on to the next one. Really great work, Ariel. Loved hearing this. This is beautiful. That was beautiful. Kind of made me homesick in a way. Just wanted to wander around in the forest during fall or something like that. So, really beautiful piece, really beautiful instrumentation, builds really well. Nice little breaks in the flute melody to breathe. This chord. All right, quick little test here. Like, this is so beautiful that I really have to, I have to like really go deep to find some issues here. But I'm just gonna mention whatever comes to mind. I'm gonna open a patch I made myself in this new piano. Okay, so in this one, it sounds like the melody. Hold on. Let's see if we can do this the proper way. I want you guys to be able to follow along and understand what's going on here. This might be an interesting lesson, it might not, we'll see. Let me see, I gotta get back to my piano. So we have this, right? Does anyone feel like that chord is a little bit off? I mean, it's beautiful, but I feel like the chord hasn't decided what it wants to be yet, if that makes sense. So it's kind of going to two chords at the same time. Sorry. It kind of want to go there, but it also goes to which is beautiful, but it's just the voicing, I think. Yeah, let me see if I can pull up Ridiculous. The voicing is something like this. Come on, why doesn't it want to do it? Here we go. Like this. So it's just a minor thing, but you could have tweaked it to, let's see. Let's see. Focusing on the C major, or focusing purely on that F major, or I think I would just maybe look at just removing one of the notes that might be clashing, but it's beautiful. It's just a minor thing. It might be just completely personal preference too. The only thing is that you're landing on a C major, but emphasizing the F, which is giving us just a little bit of a clash, but I love beautiful dissonances. But you're also on the A. So it's just a bit of an unstable chord, which isn't wrong or anything. It's basically just an F with C and bass. And yeah, it's just personal preference. But that's my thoughts on that tiny little detail. It's so beautiful. I have to like literally go into the chord voicings of individual notes, chords now. Beautiful transition, incredible atmosphere with the vocals. I would maybe even just reinforce this a little bit. Just make the melody even more to the forefront. So maybe that would be just adding like layering more. Let me see what happens if I just do a little bit of something here. Let me add in a violin and an octave below. Let me see, cello. See what that sounds like. Let me see, and I want to do this one octave above as well. Now we're going into very tiny things. Yeah, Vista is great for layering. I don't even know what I'm doing right now, but I'm just trying to. Here we go. That's like getting bigger. Alright, so that's a very, very rough addition there, but let's listen before and after. Let's add that in. And let's take it out. So what I'm just hearing is that the melody is just a little bit behind some of the other things. And reinforcing it and layering it a little bit more would just make it kind of pop out and become even more to the forefront. Is that making sense? Because now it sounds like this one group of instruments playing it, like say just violin, one. But then you have like these big other ensembles playing the chords, and they're just a little bit out of balance in terms of the melody could just be a little bit stronger to stay on the same level or a little bit above the chords. Minor thing. Incredible work on this one. Absolutely love it. Let me know if this made sense or if you agree or if you disagree. That's absolutely fine too. Again, these are just my personal preferences and thoughts that I'm throwing out there that may or may not be helpful. So let me see if I missed any. Oh yeah, that's me. We're all learning. That's a part of the journey. We're all at different places, and like this is way better than most of the things I used to make. Like I wouldn't even want to show some of the things. Actually, I should on next stream show some of the first tracks I made. The reasons I know about a lot of these mistakes and things is because I've done every single one of them. My music sounded so bad when I started out. I had no idea what I was doing. I had to literally start completely from scratch and just figure out how to make anything sound remotely okay. And it's sounding a little bit better now, I think, than what it used to do, 5-10 years ago. But we've all been at the very early stages. We're all on our own path and at different times. And the only thing that matters is to have fun and try to make something that's a little bit better than what you made yesterday. Don't compare yourself to anyone else or anyone who's further on their path compared to you. You're only competing, not even competing, but against yourself. So I wouldn't even think like that. Like, I appreciate every single submission regardless of quality, and I just want everyone to really enjoy writing music. If you enjoy writing a shitty piece of music, I would love that way more for you than if you were sitting there struggling and just hating your day writing a really great piece of music. But that, I'm just going on a detour here right now. sounds more full with layering. I would finalize with saying that it requires just a little bit more layers in the melody just to bring the make sure the melody stands out enough and like hovers over the rest of the track compared to kind of falling behind the track. Now I feel the choirs and chords are here. Well, from your perspective, it's here, and the melody is like here. I want the melody to be here, and layering. And now it just soars, you know, and I love that. So, and then if you did a second repetition, heck, we could go 2 octaves. So yeah, there you go. Now you suddenly hear how it just elevates and more layers and octaves. Again, when you already have really good components here. So if this wasn't a very good melody, had good separation to the chords and everything, the more you add, the worse it will get. But since now you've done the foundation, it's just about the polishing things. So just wanted to mention that. Let's move on. We've already spent an hour. I will keep going for a little bit more. I want to see how much more of these tracks we can get through. So let's see, Corey, let's see what we got. You said, I'm just going to address some of these questions first. So you layer it, but it's not an issue which is supposed to be fixed during the mixing. Nothing is supposed to be fixed during the mixing. That's the thing. That's one of the things I really want to hammer down is everything that you can fix earlier, either in the composing stage or in the arranging stage or the mock-up stage, should be fixed at those earlier stages, because you could not get this result from just adding an EQ or just boosting the volume, because the problem is not that it's just low in volume, it's that it's not enough people in the orchestra reinforcing that layer. So even if you were boosting it, it would just sound like the same too small group of people playing the melody, just louder. And what would also happen then is that it would sound disproportionately loud to the amount of people playing it. So if I took like a solo violin and put it on top of it, just boosted it like crazy, I would be able to hear it, but it wouldn't blend in well, because there's no way a solo violin should be able to overpower a whole brass string ensemble and soar that high, if that makes sense. So that's one thing, is that you want to make sure that the arrangement itself is balanced without any mixing needed. So here, this is more of a realistic kind of situation. Okay, this is really bothering me, that is like kind of coming in like that. So we're gonna do a quick little MIDI lesson. So you see what happens here is that I move my mod wheel first halfway into the phrase. This is a part of the third, like the polish stage. So usually I would just like, you know, knock these out really quickly, just get the structure down, and then once I've done that, I'll go in and make sure like these things are fixed. So I'll go in like that, and just drag this over here, and we're all good. This is a bit late, this is a bit late too. And personal preference, this thing, I would probably give that to a counter melody and then let the melody just go. Tiny little detail, barely worth mentioning, but that's just one thing that came to mind, just to make the ending a little bit more of an ending, and then go back in to make it less busy, because when you have a long sustained note like this, you have a prime spot to actually play around with moving counter melodies, because as I'm mentioning in my courses and programs, The counter melody rule of thumb is when the melody's moving, the counter melody should just like shut up and stand still. When the melody is resting, the counter melody can come in and kind of say, hey, here I am, and do something. But here's an opportunity for that, but it's just a minor detail. But I just want to address, like, this is not something I would ever fix in the mix. I would never want to fix anything in the mix. The mix is just about making sure that everything is in there, sounds as good as possible, and it should be just minor tweaks and details. But the general sound and power should always be there. And that is the reason why most mixes don't sound that great for people who are, you know, intermediate or amateur, is that we have this mindset of, oh, mix, like big sound should come from the mix, but it always stems from the arrangement and the composition itself and the mock-up. And if it doesn't sound already big, like it does here, now it sounds bigger. I could also keep just adding to this, you know, I could add some low brass. I kind of want to do it just to prove this point because it's such an important one. So I apologize for kind of staying on this. Well, I don't really apologize. It's a beautiful track, but for kind of lingering on this for a little while. But I think there's some like lessons worth looking at right here for anyone who's here right now or who might be attending this or like watching the replay later. So say I just want to grab something from let's do nucleus and just go to some low brass, I guess. We'll go to the trombones and tubas or something. Just gotta find my keyboard. You know what? I'm not feeling that. That sounds a bit weak. So I'm gonna add the tubas from Metropolis Arc. See, that's sounding a bit thicker now. This has like the high, the low mid and kind of mid-range energy. But I want a bit more of that lower end energy too. So again, the sound has to be right. This is not something I could fix in the mix if the source isn't there. So let me add that to here. And something else I want to add here actually while we're at it. It's just I just want some more low end power. So I know that this, okay, so I have one issue. And that is that I need to separate these two. So this is something I do as well in Ableton. You can probably do this in other things. And that is to build racks that sound good, but where in this case I will have to separate them and make sure that the last one is an octave up. And I'm using just an Ableton device for that. So here, right now, I want this to be able to play. So I'm gonna take this pitch device and take it up an octave so I can get, no, not down an octave, up an octave. And then I'm just gonna add a glue compressor real quick just to boost it. So let's just play here. There's a little note at the end there, but I might take the modulation up here. So my point with this is that if I wanted more low end energy, I wouldn't wait for the mix. I would make sure that I have enough elements to reinforce it. Like, I've just added 2 tracks right here, and I haven't added anything new, but listen to the difference. So it's just about making sure that we have made kind of a burger sandwich situation. You want to make sure that your low end is really solid and sticking out. That's what I've done here. And you want to make sure your melody is really solid and sticking out. Not sticking out like a sore thumb, but really just taking the stage in a natural way. So I've just sandwiched this orchestration right here, reinforcing the melody, reinforcing the bass line, and boom. That's it. See, tuba and the low brass players and downs. I wish I could play the tuba. That thing is absolutely sick. Let me see if I missed anything. I layered, not an issue, which is supposed to be missing. That's what we addressed. Let me see, good idea to use octaves together for melodies. Oh yeah, like for melodies, octaves is the way. So you can use it to add more thickness and depth and power to more or less anything. And the reason octaves are so incredibly powerful is that when you layer octaves, the overtones of the 2 instruments are interlocking and actually reinforcing one another. And octaves are the only interval that actually does that. Fifths come pretty close because there's a certain like they resonate together in a good way. But thirds, the reason why you want to avoid using too many thirds and like having too many third doublings is that the third to root relationship creates overtones that don't overlap, like they conflict. So you create a lot of information that can become very messy and create imbalances to our ears and how we perceive sound, because there's so much going on that our ears can't really figure out what's going on. And it might sound like chaos, mud, and just not very a pleasant arrangement. So octaves, really great for melodies, and there's no better way to create a grandiose, massive Hollywood sound. Like, listen to this. This is 3 octaves right here. So yeah, octaves all the way. Really, really powerful. And do you usually quantize ostinatos? I quantize it, but I usually set my settings to this, like 86% or 50%. So if I'm gonna quantize it, you see, like this, you see it gets closer, but it's not all the way there. You know what I mean? So it gets almost perfect. And then if I want to get it even closer to perfect, I can just keep hitting it. And each time I hit, you see, it will get closer, but it will never get like all the way there. It will just keep getting, oh well, it will if you keep going, but it will never automatically just snap to the grid. So I usually set it to like 70-80% in terms of quantizing. That to me is kind of the sweet spot where it doesn't sound sloppy, because no orchestra with professional players would play completely out of rhythm or be really late. And second is that even if one player was late, this is like the whole orchestra. You would never get this situation. You know, that one player that would be late would just blend into the masses of everything else. So yeah, for the orchestra, you want things to be fairly tight, but I try to make it like 86%, like I think you saw here, and I just do it a couple of times while still not making it absolutely perfect. Ostinatos, same kind of thing, but you want to make sure it never loses the rhythm. It needs to be tight, it needs to be having that drive, and having too little quantization is going to kill that drive because it's going to sound sloppy. Having too much, yeah, will make it sound a little bit robotic. So there's a happy medium, I think, when it comes to that. Let's see if we can just listen to chorus track real quick. Oh, beautiful woodwind textures already. Nice, beautiful Zelda-esque pianos. Giving me kind of Studio Ghibli vibes. Yeah, this is stunning. Okay, so really, really beautiful Studio Ghibli-esque atmospheres here. Couple of things that again just comes to mind is that I miss a little bit of a defining motif that can be developed through here, because there's a lot of opportunities here to have a melody take the forefront. There's a lot of chords, ostinatos, and little like extra movements going on, but I just miss a really central, powerful motif to that sticks in my head. It could be very simple, but that's one. There's a lot of opportunities here to create something really iconic. You know what I mean? And also for the first almost 2 minutes, I love these moments of swells. Here are some hints of some great melodies. But it feels like it's only counter melodies, if that makes sense. Let's see if we just improvise something over. So right now, there's too much going on in the background, as you can hear. Just clashes, and they're all fighting for space. But what I would do is that I would take away some of these background elements, and I would focus on a very powerful, simple motif, something like that. Something like that, you know? Just the first thing that came to mind, but I wouldn't use exactly that. But you get the idea that it's like developing and that it's very minimal. That's one thing that came to mind. The second thing I was thinking of is that through the whole thing, the first 2 minutes, there's a lot of like high elements. Oh, whoops, that's from the last example. Like, I would love to hear some more lower elements here as well, you know what I mean? Some like strings coming in, you know, the lower octaves. That comes in and say I just go into these strings. I would like solidify a very simple like low moving. Oh, so I got the legatos as well. And just simplify it a little bit, and then bring in some of these background elements to make sure they work with the main melody. Otherwise, absolutely stunning piece. Great work on that, Corey. We almost have to end, but I know Marco is in this chat, and it mentioned he submitted it. And I want to have a look at it. This is the Composer Accelerator submission. I've seen your name in here somewhere, asking some questions, so definitely gonna get through this one. messed everything up. So really creepy and really cool atmosphere going on here. Immediate thoughts is that I would love to hear from this point some more movement, some kind of ostinato or pulsing synth or anything like that. I'm just gonna play this low string cello patch from like way back, just to see what the feeling of more rhythm does to this track at that point. Here I feel like some more rhythm should come in, so. Holy mother of, there is the craziest latency I've ever felt. But something, wow, that's impossible to play that fast with this latency. Hope you get the idea. That's like the crappiest explanation I've ever done of anything, I think. But some kind of pulsing rhythm there that gets the pace up. It could be a pulsing synth. It could be some more rhythmic elements. Second thing is that I could use some samples. Let me see if I go to wait, I'm in the wrong place here. Like I would play around with a little bit more like kind of sound designy, like that going into the transitions. If that makes sense, just to highlight these transitions and as a way to like instill even more scary atmospheres and make it easier to cut to, whether it's for trailers or anything else. That's just something that came to mind. And then bringing in more rhythm just to pick up the pace, because that's going to help guide the, not necessarily texture samples, because textures could be a bit busy. I like the space. I'm only thinking of tonal transitions and sound design. These are from Kronos, which is a sample pack in the bundle that's in Compose Accelerator. I would use more like impacts and tonal transitions just to make the hits and the new sections more impactful every like 4 bars. And then at this point have something that keeps pulsing, because then you can pick up the pace in the video editing as well, say the second part of the trailer. And then from here until something, you could eventually start building in having a riser coming in, which you do, but one that kind of keeps building in the background and coming in towards the very end. Just my immediate thoughts. Let's see if we can do Chris's track here. Oh wait, no, that's what I added, of course. I'm just even confusing myself. This is a beautiful theme so far. This feels a little extreme stereo image where one is extreme right, one is extreme left. As a pianist, I'm used to having something that's a little bit more cohesive and not like one instrument in each ear. But it's also a creative choice, so I absolutely support it. Beautiful strings. Okay, so immediate thoughts is that this one sounds a little dry. This one could do with a little bit of like gluing it together a little bit. And the stereo image is pretty wide, but it's a really beautiful theme. I also think some of these transitions, it's a little like abrupt, just like dying off. I would maybe look at that, and then I would have some kind of like rolls and build up and something that's a bit more gradual leading into this, because now it kind of just like boom comes in, and I would love a ramp up into that a little bit more. That's just my immediate thoughts. And then here, it's a little bit much going on with like the brass counter melodies and then those background woodwind kind of ostinatos and the melody and the fast rhythms. So I would maybe look at simplifying it a little bit just to make it less busy, because it's such beautiful individual things in here that when there's too many elements at once, it just gets a little confusing and your brain can't really comprehend it. And yeah, it would sound even more beautiful if you just let the theme breathe a little bit more, just let it be what it actually is, instead of trying to support it with too many things, because it's a beautiful theme, so it doesn't need that much support. So a little bit more reverb to glue it together, I think. Working a little bit on the transitions and how you go into the final section, and then simplifying it a little bit is my only main thoughts. Now we got to start. We're going through like I think 20 tracks soon based on what I'm seeing here. I'll probably not, because I've added a couple. But Alex, an absolute legend. I definitely want to just listen to his before we end this. So let's see what he's got in store for us today. Okay, this is really cool so far. I just want to point out some things that I think is really cool here. So the composition itself is chaotic, right? But to me, the sound of it is not chaotic. Do you agree? Because I feel like even though there's a lot going on, they're all trying to say the same thing. Like they're all a different part of the same animal on the same mission. And they're not fighting against one another. They're all aligned perfectly, I feel. Because all of the brass, all the rhythms, the strings, the choirs, even the background like runs, they're all following this rhythm and highlighting that. That's like the heart, the core of the theme. And I feel when you're arranging something more complex, you need to find like what's the essence, like what's the heart of what I'm trying to do here. Because if you don't settle on the heart of it, like what is the most important thing to communicate, then things you won't be able to align the different layers to communicate the same thing or the same core, and then things get chaotic. But when you have really settled on the only thing you want to say is this, we got odd meters, we got clusters, we got dissonances. I love it. This is great. So let's just see what we got further here. Beautiful writing, great separation between elements. I don't have anything to add here really. I'm just loving this. I can already tell this is gonna be a good build. Beautiful swells. God damn. Yeah, that's impressive as hell. I love that. Someone wrote this feels like a breathing organism, and yes, you can even see here how it's like breathing, and like the danger with writing stuff like that, which Alex did not like fall into that trap, is just making it so it looks like this. You're trying to just do everything at all the time without, I don't know where that came from. You're trying to do everything all the time without actually like settling on something. So here it's all moving and breathing, and it's really dynamic. It goes from here down to like barely quiet, and then a little bit more, and then more, and then another swell. It's very dynamic, and it's very organized in terms of the arrangement. It builds, goes down, builds, goes down, keeps it interesting the whole time. I really enjoyed that. I don't have anything really to say about it other than that was really impressive. I really enjoyed that. I'm going to listen to it again later. And I think this is a prime spot to end this call. And I really appreciate all of you showing up this Monday morning, at least Monday morning for me. I don't know what it is. It's probably Monday evening for most of you. See, there's a lot of Europeans in here. I really, really appreciate you guys showing up. Let me know if you would like more sessions like this. For me, this was a really nice way to start my week. And I'm actually going to go to the airport in a couple hours and pick up Walid, who's actually coming out to LA as well. So hope maybe we'll be able to jump on one of these together pretty soon. I am just going to quickly go over these comments, make sure I haven't missed anything. But really amazing work from everyone who submitted today. There's a lot of really, really great ideas. Like every idea was in there that really was really interesting and had some really cool elements to it. And there's especially a few, you know, that I looked at that were so close to just being like perfect, but just needed a little something. And this is what, so like the tracks and stuff that really I think would benefit from something like the Composer Accelerator, which is literally, this is something we will do as well. We'll look at specific problems, we'll fix them, we'll talk about why, and really just dial things in to get it way more professional, but at the same time speeding up the workflow so you can get to those more professional sounding results faster and more consistently over and over again, and just have more fun, enjoy it more, explore more, but explore within the realm of knowing how to attack an arrangement, how to make it sound bigger, how to make it sound more layered, thicker, and make the builds and transitions better and so on, while still just having a blast and trying to find back that childish curiosity, which I'm trying to find again these days, or have kind of rediscovered, just having more fun with people in sessions in the studio, and not being so analytical and critical. And it's been a really nice thing for me, at least, and from everyone else I've seen doing similar things. So again, just wanted to let you guys know that really appreciate you guys showing up and all the submissions. I'll probably do another call whenever I get time, maybe even next week or something like that, with the remainder of the tracks. I wish I could have more submissions, but we didn't even get through half this one. So I definitely think I might have to make this a regular thing if you guys are up for it, you know. I'll let you guys know. Again, have a beautiful week, and I'll see you guys really soon. And if you guys are interested in checking out the Composer Accelerator, I'll drop a link under this video. If not, hope to see you on the next live call.